So my name is Greta McLAIN. I am the owner and artistic director of GOODSPACE Murals. We are a community-focused public art studio that specializes in large-scale community murals. We are women-run, and we are all about how do we get as many hands as possible into the creation, ideation, and celebration of big pieces of public art. GOODSPACE Murals is located in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We focused a lot of our early work on really digging into the local scene here in Minneapolis, but now find that we travel more than anything to do our work and try to do a lot of skill sharing and technique and skill building across the US and actually now into Mexico as well. So we have been doing workshops and big murals in Massachusetts, West Virginia, North Dakota, Iowa, and yeah, all over. So we are from Minnesota, but are all over the US. I personally did my very first mural when I was 9 years old during like a school residency where my teacher invited me to paint a mural on the hallway wall of my school, and from that moment on I have been a muralist. So just recently I'm kind of relaxing into like the bigger title of artist, but I definitely am specialized as a muralist, and that's how I define myself. I ended up going to school at the University of California, Davis in Northern California, and working with poster artists, activists, and muralist Malaquias Montoya. He is a very prolific, amazing poster maker and artist from the 60s and 70s. I mean, he's been making work his whole career. He's still around, and really was very important in introducing what community art can do for a greater movement during the Chicano Power movement of the 60s and 70s. And he seeded in me this idea of art as a total tool for activism and a tool to uplift and work with our communities, and also that it's really an honor as an artist to get to be the person that facilitates those projects and that gets to listen to those community stories and gets to empower our stories being on the walls. So that was really instilled in me through my work with Malaquias. My specialty is responding to community story and listening for that greater intuitive message of what the mural can do and what can really uplift or at least be seated in the images that are in these murals. In my own work, I love to play with texture and color, which is really funny, to like play with abstraction and portraiture and how they mix. I'm a Cancer, so I'm very emotional, and I feel like that's the way that I kind of can interpret my inner world is through that like those color fields and the people that are important to me. But the majority of my work is community focused. Another thing that I do look at in my work is there's always this layer of what is the woman's story, and that's just something that I will bring, my team will bring. We are moms, we are women, we are in different stages of our lives, and we're interpreting the world obviously as women in that different emotional way, in that way of what is the best thing we can do for our kid, how do we balance being a good mom and being a good muralist, or being a good professional and sometimes failing and sometimes getting it right. And one of the things that I wanted to do when I graduated from high school was like I was going to either be a community muralist or a quilt maker. So I think you still see that layer of textile and that layer of sort of like how do you create art that is beautiful but also has a purpose or a greater way of taking care of something, that whether it's your children and keeping them warm or your greater community in order to tell their story. So what are the benefits of community art and doing these big community projects and community murals? I really think that so often the betterment of our neighborhoods come at the cost of just a greater displacement, or this idea of gentrification is happening, it is out of control. There are these systems in place that are making changes, making decisions about where I live or what my community looks like, and I feel out of control. I don't have a voice here. I don't feel like it's for me. It's happening to me, and I'm afraid of it. I feel like when we introduce these community murals, it's a moment for people to see that they are heard and that they can find their own voice or their own way in to feeling like, oh, I'm part of this change. I'm part of this greater story, and I am part of this community. This community is not trying to displace me or push me out. They're inviting me in. They're interested in listening to me. They're interested in hearing my story, and I now feel pride in how I am creating this space, and I know that I'm important. And we might all say like, oh yes, we are all important, but as our communities shift and change around us, we can feel like so pushed out. And I feel like community art is an amazing tool to open up the conversation again and say, who's here now and how are the changes that are being made in these communities for the people that live here? Something that we use is really like a lot of different techniques to figure out how to activate these walls as organizing tools and tools to get younger painters, maybe more inexperienced painters, into these positions of being like important artists in the creation of these bigger works. One of the ways that we did, like the one that behind us, was we made like a giant paint by number on the wall and invited kids to come and paint directly on the wall in their neighborhood park. Those kind of moments are super pivotal, at least were in my life, of this feeling of, wow, I am important, what I do counts, and also I can use the skill that I have as an artist in order to make this bigger change or this bigger impact. I also think it's super important for kids to see other artists working so that they know that this is like a viable profession. There are so many kids that are just really find their voice through art, but don't see any models or people doing it as a profession. So that's one thing that we love to model. But we also just love the idea of, you are important. Look what we made together. We need you. We cannot do the community work without the community. We would not think to represent you without listening to you, without inviting you into creating the work with us. Another tool that we use a lot in order to really seed that idea of community ownership and that bigger participation is the indirect parachute cloth technique. The majority of our murals are actually done using that technique, and again, it's a way that we can make the process as accessible as possible and invite as many hands into the making, again, as possible. It's all about access, invitation, and celebration. Look what we can make together, and also creating something that at the end of the day is really high quality and beautiful, so that it's not like, oh, look what we made together, but like whatever you can tell. It's like, look what we made together, and it's beautiful, and we're proud of it because we can see the quality of it and also the greater impact of what this does, how this changes and transforms the space, and I know I was part of that. There's all kinds of different ways that these projects can start. Often community groups like reach out to us and say, hey, we have this idea, we have this, this specific circumstance where we really need to pull the community into this new building, into this, this community conversation that's happening. We need to activate the space. We're doing revitalization of our downtown. We have a school that's failing and we want to bring more attention to it. There's all kinds of reasons that we are pulled in. Sometimes we apply for projects. Often we're part of the fundraising and actually supply budgets and language for different grant writing, because so often these kind of budgets to do this really deep work are not available immediately. Once we are started with a community group, we tend to think of our process in 3 phases. We have community design, which is before there is a sketch and is all about deep listening and activating the different community groups that we are inviting into the process. So it's like, is it for the whole town? Is it for the whole city? Or is it for just the people that live around this wall? Is it just for city makers? So we define with the project partners who the community is that we are activating, and then we do all kinds of different listening sessions, maybe design activities, or different sort of alternative creating alternative spaces where we can access each other's stories in a different way. Once we have a sense of what that greater community story or intent is for what the mural can do, whether it's create a safer space or put out the message of all are welcome, or tell our history and our stories, or give us hope for the future and our youth, whatever it is, then we go into design, and me and my team, we create the base strokes of what a design can look like. Often we work with local photographers to get kind of reference photos of students or community members that are important to the story, and then we present our sketch to the community. So often we get it really close but not exactly right, and so then we go into edits so that we definitely, by the time we are going into fabrication, have something that has been approved of, if not taken over and owned by the community in which it's going to live. Then we go into community fabrication, which is our second phase, and that's where we have a bunch of paint parties or different kind of make sessions where we invite the community to actually paint the piece with us. That's a great time for us to also pull in local artists and people that are interested in learning our techniques so that they can use the opportunity of this project in order to kind of push on their portfolios and ask us questions and learn how we do our process. One thing that we notice is that when we're traveling, so often people are using creative placemaking as like a buzz term, and they really want community involvement in public art and in mural making, but there are very few places where artists can get the resources that they need in order to do this work. So more than anything, what we find is that when we travel is that we kind of access the local art scene and try to, you know, create a sustainable model where we can say, hey, do you want to learn about murals? We would love to teach you. Do you want to be part of our crew? We would love to have you. And in that way we can start to build what this community mural movement can be. And then the final phase is installation and celebration. So if we are doing an indirect project, that's when we glue it to the wall and do the overpainting, or that last phase can just be kind of our final touches and making sure that it really finishes smooth and looks like a very high quality professional piece. And then we party about it. And that's our community celebration. Do you want to say anything about why you think murals are cool, Sunny?
Because
you have to look in the camera. Say, my name is Sunny. And say how old you are.
I'm 7.
I'd
say murals are cool because I'd say paint parties are cool. Because it brings the community together.
All right.